the people who were facing the glass that was looking toward the North Tower all at once jumped up and went running by me toward the exit. And it was as clear as this room is. And with a snap of your fingers, it was pitch black. I run to my best friend, and he pulled me tight to his chest, and he said, "I love you, brother. I may never see you again." And he turned around, he went in the stairwell, and they went up. That's one of the bravest guys I ever knew. And, I lost that guy.
We just had a plane crash into Level 4 of the World Trade Center, transmit a second alarm, and start relocating companies into the area.
I went out to his home in Long Island, and when I went and sat on their couch, there were two little boys crawling around on the floor. I said, one day when those boys are older and they want to know about their dad, tell them to reach out to me, and I'll tell them about their dad's last moment. About 5 years ago, I got an email from Michael Francis Lynch, Jr., who now was 22 years old. And he's like, "I did everything right with my life. My dad would be proud. Now I want to know about my dad."
So I originally, Tim, first heard about your story through a listener. Had a guy named Nick in Coral Gables, Florida, reach out to me. He's a fireman out there.
Right.
And he said, "Hey man, love the show. You should look into this guy, Tim Brown. He's got a great story. He tells it really well, and he changed my life when he came out to Coral Gables."
Oh.
So I looked you up right afterwards, and I thought it was funny. The first podcast that popped up was your interview with my friend Danny Jones on Concrete.
Right.
Watched for about, 20, 30 minutes, and I was like, okay, that's enough. I need to get him out here. He's, you're a great storyteller, and we're going to get into this. I don't want to get ahead of us, but I think that part of the reason that you were left here on September 12th is because of just how beautifully you memorialize your brothers and all the people that we lost on that day, and continue to say their names and their families' names. And like we were talking about before, make sure that we really never forget, because never forget really means never forget. So seriously, man, it's an honor to have you. Thank you for coming out here. It means a lot to me personally.
Thank you, Don. Thanks for having me out. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Tim, you are a 20-year decorated FDNY firefighter, for people that may not be familiar with your story. And your last assignment was at the Elite Special Operations Rescue 3, which covers the Bronx and Harlem. And that's another thing Nick said, actually. He said, he's like, "Listen, I'm out here in Miami, but when somebody says Bronx and FDNY, like, we even know what that is. That's instant respect," is what he said. First responder to both the 93 World Trade Center attack and obviously the 9/11 attack, where you lost 93 of your friends, including several of your best friends. Part of the search and rescue team that was sent to the Oklahoma City bombing, and also the team that responded to the Station nightclub fire in Rhode Island that killed 100 people.
I did, yeah.
So to set the stage for becoming a fireman, let's talk about your childhood. So where did you grow up, and then what got you interested in becoming a fireman?
Some would say I never grew up. They say that a lot about firefighters. So I grew up in Newington, Connecticut. I have 4 siblings. We were in a suburban bedroom community, suburb of Hartford, Connecticut, the insurance capital of the world. And I was right in the middle of that pack of kids. I was not the greatest student. I think my mom's nickname for me was Dennis the Menace. I was a difficult kid, and I was just a regular kid. I got average to below average grades in high school, and I was not doing well at all in high school. In those years of 12, 13 years old, where kids are struggling, I was also. My parents were getting divorced. and that was rough on all of us. Until 15 years old, where I met my friend Jay Walsh at a house fire across the street from where I lived. And Jay lived all the way on the other side of town, and I said, "What are you doing here? You know, this is all the way on the other side of town." And he kind of goes like, "I'm a junior fireman." And I was like, "What is that?" He said, "Come down Wednesday nights and see if you like it. Maybe you could be a junior fireman too." And the truth is, I went down there to the meeting. You know, they're learning about fire engines and stuff like that. And uh, uh, a week later, Jay came back to me and he said, "Tim, you can either be a junior fireman or you can be stoned. You can't be both." In other words, knock it off, right? And so that is actually what got me on track. You know, I stopped being a bad kid. I stopped getting in trouble. My grades got better because I wanted desperately to be this junior fireman guy. And then EMT with the volunteer ambulance, and then, you know, we all together as our little tribe of young men. All of our dream was to be a New York City fireman, and that's where it was born. There, when I was 15, 16 years old, and it changed my life. It got me on track, and I had focus, I had drive, I had mission. Uh, and that got me through a lot. It got me all the way through college, which I just found out 2 years ago that I have an associate's degree. I had no idea that I had one. And yeah, so it got me through all those times. I was just so focused on being a New York City fireman that it just really was a lifesaver for me.
So what were your parents like? What did they do?
So Dad was he was an Army guy, uh, which got him into engineering. He designed, built, and sold lasers in the 60s, right, which was the big new thing back then. Very smart guy, church-going guy. He sang in the church choir. In fact, you know, right up until his death, that was one of the gifts he had. I remember probably the last time I saw him alive. He couldn't walk very well. He still had his wits about him, but the one thing he could do was sing, and so he would sit on the edge of his bed and sing to me. And that will be one of the greatest memories I'll ever have of my father. Now, he wanted to be a volunteer fireman, and my mom was like, "Absolutely not. Impossible. You're already working full time, singing in the choir. I need help at home with the 5 kids." So so he never got to do it. He wanted to do it pretty badly. He never got to do it. My brother Mike was a volunteer fireman when he went to college in upstate New York. So he was the first one in the family. And then I was the second, and then my younger brother Chris was the third. So 3 of us wound up. Mike was volunteer. Chris and I were both paid firefighters. So I was a volunteer in Newington, Connecticut. Then I went to college at the University of New Haven in West Haven, Connecticut, where my desired degree was a bachelor's in fire science. I lived in the firehouse there in West Haven, Connecticut, for free. As long as I was there and I jumped on the truck, I was an extra set of hands for them. And I got experience on how to become a fireman. And I left there in 82 and became a paid fireman in New Britain, Connecticut. So it was my first real paid gig. I was there for under 2 years. And in 84, I got the brass ring, and I got the call to become a New York City fireman. And that was July 11th of 84.
Okay. So yeah, one thing I wanted to ask you about New Britain, and we were talking a little bit off camera about this, just about how important it is for kids to have strong role models, and in this case, young boys, which obviously we once were, to have strong male role models. And if you don't have that as a father, it becomes even more important. So, I know there's a lot of men that watch the show that are of the age now of either being fathers to children
Right.
or being that role model to a kid. So I think at New Britain, Wiggy Johnson was that guy to you?
That was in West Haven.
West Haven,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So still, before we get to FDNY,
yes,
but
yeah.
what impact did he have on your life?
Yeah, so Chief Bill Johnson, his nickname was Wiggy, was, I think, then the assistant chief of the West Haven Center District's paid fire department. And he started the program, and I was the first, they call us bunkies. So, there'd be an extra bunk in the bunk room, and we got to live there, But those were some years I was struggling with my relationship with my real dad. I was putting myself through school. I had very little support from my family, which was good. It taught me to be self-reliant, so good in some ways. But Wiggy just kind of by default, he had his own kids. He didn't need another kid, but he was a good man. And he took me under his wing, kind of as a father figure. And he knew that on the weekends I was eating like ramen noodles. And he would throw me $20, $30, whatever, and tell me to go out and get some real food. He couldn't afford it. He had his own family to take care of, but he did it anyhow because he loved me and he wanted to help take care of me. He wanted to mentor me, and that was forever. I will consider him a father figure. His son, Wiglet, we call him, Little Wiggy, who is now like the number 2 chief in the West Haven Fire Department, has over the last 20, 25 years accepted me as his brother, kind of as his big brother. And we spend time together. He invited me up, to be part of the family when we buried Wiggy. I asked him, I had a FDNY patch, and, we buried Chief Johnson, Wiggy, in his dress uniform. And I asked him if I could tuck the patch under his coat next to his heart, and he let me do it. And so my good friend, Chief Bill Johnson, West Haven Fire Department, will have a part of me with him, with his body forever. And that's how I felt about him. He felt that way about me. He was bursting with pride about, my trek to the New York City Fire Department, and then 9/11. And, that whole fire department kind of adopted me, even through my career with FDNY. They would come down and visit me in New York. And then whenever I came up, I would go see them and go see Wiggy. A tough old Marine who fought right up to the end till COVID got him. Mm-hmm. But the world, this country needs more men like that, and we need to be that for the kids, right? And I try to be the best mentor I can for the young folks, to be the best example. I'm not by far perfect, but I try to be a good role model. If they need help with things, I try to be there for them. It's our job as men in a community that if a kid is struggling, to try and help them. It's all of our responsibility. They are our responsibility. And I know that when I needed help, men outside my direct family helped me, and they showed me love and mentorship. My friend Jay, is the one I will forever give credit to for showing me the interest in becoming a firefighter, and that would change my life. So he changed my life. He was only a year older than me, but he was a young man who had a big influence on me.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And we'll definitely get into this, but just the way that you guys take care of each other and take care of each other's families, you're doing a great job of it now.
Thank
I know you might not say it yourself, but I know the things that you do, and we'll talk about that a little later. But so, at what points do you become a New York City fireman?
So it's July 11th, 1984. I am just 22 years old. I was actually living in Connecticut, and on Friday, I guess it would be the 8th of July, I get a phone call saying I'm being appointed to the New York City Fire Department on Monday. So I had to pack up everything in the apartment and drive to my friend's house in Long Island and move in with him so that I was a resident on the first day of getting sworn in. So this all happened very suddenly. There was a screw up in the mail. I never got the mail notification I was supposed to have gotten. So it was a bit of a panic. I got down there, lived with my friend Billy in Long Island, and Monday morning we got up about four guys and piled into Billy's car, and we drove in and got sworn in to be New York City firefighters, and that was 6 weeks in the fire academy. It was a little bit of a culture shock and a change for me. You know, being a fireman in New York City is different than just about anywhere else. And you have to I had to try to forget a lot of the stuff I was trained and learned before. And so it was a little bit of a struggle, but I wound up getting appointed to, or assigned to 73 Engine in Hunts Point in the South Bronx, nicknamed La Casa Caca. And I'll just let you interpret that the way you will.
Google Translate.
Google Translate. And so talk about a culture shock. It was Hunts Point in the South Bronx in the mid '80s. Just after the war years, or some would say the very tail end of the war years. Tremendous amount of fire duty every day, every night, and just a very poor, drug-infested, gang-infested, run-down, terrible, terrible place. And violence. And amongst all this were innocent children, innocent moms, people who had to hide not just in their apartments, but below the windowsill. So when the bullets went through your window, you wouldn't get hit by them. And that is the reason that I was a fireman, for those people, for those innocent people. I mean, we would take care of everyone, but especially for those innocent kids, because they didn't have a choice, right? They didn't do anything wrong. They didn't do anything to deserve being in a neighborhood like that. And, when the little kids see the firemen, their eyes get big. And they smile and they wave and they come visit the firehouse. And there's really nothing more gratifying or satisfying than having a little kid smile at you because he knows you're the good guy and you're going to take care of him, right? And fill their bike, fix their tire on their bike and fill it up with air so they can ride their bike, right? So I enjoyed being a fireman. I loved being on the nozzle, we call it. It's one of the best places in a fire because you're the guy that really puts the fire out. And when you put the fire out, your problems go away, right? And it's a very satisfying place to be, is to go in and put these fires out. And I learned from the best nozzlemen in the South Bronx, and we did it a lot. We were in fires a lot, and I ran the fire department soccer team back then, and through that I got to meet a lot of guys from different places in the FDNY, and that kind of got me on a path. After the first 7 years, I got on the path to special operations because some of the guys I worked with Lieutenant Pete Lund, Lieutenant Mike Cogan, who were lieutenants in Rescue 3, the Bronx Harlem Rescue Company, heavy rescue elite of the Bronx Harlem Fire Department. And so on my path from 73 Engine, I went to Ladder 4 in Times Square for a year and a half, where I learned a whole different way of firefighting. And then up to Rescue 3 back in the Bronx for almost 7 years. So
a couple things there. The first being when you take the oath, you become somebody who is willing to, if necessary, give your life for someone that you don't even know.
right.
Do you think that is that intrinsic to that person who takes the oath? Or is it like nature or is it nurture, you think?
So the oath is just words, right? I mean, they're powerful words, but it's just words. The question is, will you fulfill those words in that moment in time? And we'll talk about it later about 9/11. But, we every day risk our lives as firefighters, right? Police officers, first responders. And we agree to work in that dangerous environment, but sometimes it's just even that step further. What will you do when the moment arrives, when you have to fulfill that oath in words, in deed, in action? And that is the measure of a man, right? Or a woman. So I want to do good. I want to serve others. I want to, I'm willing to put my life on the line if I am called. We had the fire day before yesterday, or a couple days ago in Harlem, where 3 hero firefighters went over the 6-story roof on ropes to save people who were, one person already jumped, right? I mean, we train and drill and train and drill and train and drill, but then when the real moment comes and you're hanging on one rope 6 stories up, going to a window where smoke and fire is coming out to save someone's life. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do, to let go of that roof and put your life in your partner's hand and in the rope's hand. There's this thing called a anti-chafing device that goes over the concrete, because the concrete will cut the rope if the concrete is strong and sharp. And I noticed in one of the rope rescues, that anti-chafing device fell off and slid down the rope. That means this rope is cutting against the sharp concrete with the weight of 2 people on it. A recipe for disaster, and things like that happen, right? But those guys, those heroes, had to make that choice to let go of that parapet, to let go of that roof, and put their life on the line, because that person down there, that child in that window, needs you right now, right? So it's all those moments. It wasn't just 9/11. It's those moments where we do it all across America. And right now, my niece Taylor is a firefighter in Providence, Rhode Island, and she is doing it, right? She is on the line, putting her life at risk to save fellow firefighters and other innocent folks who need her help. So oath is words. We'll see if you perform in action what your words say. And I would say what I have witnessed in 20 years in the New York City Fire Department, including 9/11, about 100% of the firefighters and police officers fulfill their words in deed and in action.
Yeah. And that's why I asked that question too. And to be honest with you, with the New York first responders, I didn't really separate the words from the actions, just because of hearing all the stories from 9/11 and just hearing just about how heroic all these people were, just like you said, it seems like 100% to me.
Right. What will you do? That's the question. What will you do? What measure will you live up to? And I don't know. I have not seen a first responder who didn't live up to their words.
And another thing you said, and I think people would probably expect this to be the case, but just that being a New York City fireman is different than being a fireman everywhere else. So what was like an average day like as a New York City fireman? Like what kind of calls were you guys going on? What was it like in the firehouse?
The fire. So the funny thing back then, 80s. If you were a fireman north of 125th Street, basically you did whatever you wanted. There was no connection with headquarters, with leadership. Uh, they weren't watching what you did. As long as you, as long as the fires went out and you saved people's lives, they wanted to look the other way because it was such a Wild West that it was a little bit unbelievable. So, you know, the cops knew where to go, right? Because they're getting shot at. So when they needed to take a breath, they knew to go to the firehouse, and they'd pull up a couch and hang out with us. Funny on the other side of the coin, the prostitutes also knew where to go because they knew it was safe, and they would running it off the street, and they would come to the firehouse. And my point in that is everybody knew to come to the firehouse.
Mm.
It was a place of safety, of protection. It's a place where the firefighters would take care of you if you needed, no matter who you were. Most importantly, the children knew that they could come to the firehouse and that they would be safe there. I mean, we we saw a lot of very, very bad stuff: shootings, stabbings, murders, rapes, kids being shot and stabbed and raped, and just terrible, terrible things. Right. So when we were in the firehouse, we would blow off steam, however we would, and we didn't always follow the rules. I remember playing in the back kitchen. We played flaming shuffleboard for fun, and just let your imagination go with that one. But when the bell hit, we were on that truck and we were out the door, and we were going to risk our lives. Back in the 80s, we were considered the man. So just like the cops, we would get shot at. They would call in a false alarm, or they'd set a fire in a vacant building, and then they'd wait on the rooftop with a bucket of cement, and they'd drop the bucket from the roof and try and kill us going into the building. Or they would set a fire on the 5th or 6th floor in a vacant building, and then when we got in there, they'd pour all the gasoline in the 1st floor and trap us and light the fire beneath us, and we would have to fall. Or it was a drug den, and there were booby traps, so we would get booby trapped. It was a very bad and a very sad time in America. But we were the last line of defense, the last line of hope for all these innocent people, mostly Black or Hispanic, very poor, just trying to get through life, and we were their last hope. And that's quite a good feeling to be able to hold someone's hand, to hold grandma's hand and say, it's going to be okay. We're here. We're going to take care of you. We're going to take care of your family. And we're here to protect you. Yeah. Most of us didn't grow up like that, right? So, and I didn't grow up like that. But to see these people in this situation uh, is very sobering. Um, and when you're able to help them, it's very rewarding to be able to help those people.
So when you're seeing those sorts of things on, on a daily basis, right? New York's it's obviously a huge city. It's densely populated. There's probably a high volume of those things occurring.
Yeah.
How do you how do you leave that at work? Like most of the world, I don't know what percentage is first responders, but most of the world can't relate to going into work and seeing that sort of thing every day. So how do you leave it at work, and did it bleed into your personal life? Did it affect you as Tim?
It affected me 100%. I didn't have a wife or children to um, at home to hide it from. Uh, so it was 100% of my life. When I went home, if I wasn't grabbing a shower and sleeping, I was with my buddies Terry and Patrick, and we were listening to the radio. We never left it. We were talking about, what happened at your firehouse last night, what happened at my firehouse last night, what was unusual, what could we learn from each other. So we were FDNY 24/7, 365, and that's why when they were murdered on September 11th, it wasn't they weren't just my colleagues, they were my whole life. Um, and it was, they were all ripped away from me. If you were a special operations fireman on the day of September 11th, 2001, whether you were on the night shift or the day shift, because we switched at 0900, um, basically it was your death sentence. Over 90% of the special operations firefighters were killed on 9/11 in the FDNY. And so getting back to the question, uh, I never had to worry about bringing the job home with me. I always had someone to talk about the job with. It was my whole life. Um, and on that, I keep going back to 9/11, but it's true. Um, and I didn't learn this until 15, 20 years later. On the day of 9/11, I ceased being a New York City fireman, and I began being a 9/11 fireman. And I didn't get that for a long time. The New York City Fire Department had to move on, as they would still had to be a fire department. There's still fires across the city. But I kind of got stuck in the 9/11 thing, and um, and I don't mind that. I'm in a way honored to talk about it and talk about my friends, but um, I to this day, do I bring it home? It just never leaves me. I was a New York City fireman. I am now a 9/11 fireman, and and uh, and it's okay.
So going back to what you said about holding grandma's hand and being compassionate, I mean I would assume it takes a certain percentage of having like a tough exterior, um like a shield, right, to do the job of a first responder, and especially in a place like New York. But there's also that element of compassion that you need to have, right, to be out there with the community and take care of people. So what is the right balance between being tough and being compassionate to do that job?
I think um, I don't know. You have to turn that switch on and off accordingly, right? Something popped in my mind with this question about being a tough New York City fireman. In the 80s, um, I was what we call a buff. I had a camera, so even off duty, I would go take pictures of the guys at fires and the fires themselves and all that. And I was taking pictures of a fire in the South Bronx, and these kids were climbing all over. These, I call them punks. They're teenage kids causing trouble. Um, and they were harassing the firemen. And this stores are blazing, and we're trying to, they're trying to stop the fire from spreading. They're trying to make sure nobody's in there, and the kids are being jerks, and they're getting in the way, and they're mouthing off. And one of the firemen had a Halligan bar, this big metal pry bar, and he takes the thing with his hand, and he swings it, and he catches the kid right in the shin, and he breaks both bones in the kid's shin. The bones pop out of the skin, and the kid goes down screaming in excruciating pain. And then the guy spits on him. And I'm saying that not to bash the firemen. I'm saying that because this is what we were dealing with. We're trying to do good. The kids are throwing things at us. They're they're shooting at us. They're maybe take a swing with a knife at you or something. So you had to be a tough guy. You had to show them that you were not going to take it from them, and that they weren't allowed to do that to firemen. And a tough lesson to learn, right? But at the same time, that fireman is going to be the guy that crawls into that fire and pulls a kid out, or goes to take care of, as we said, go take care of grandma. So those switches had to go on and off, and you had to be a compassionate soul, but then you also had to be a bit of an asshole, and that was survival. Just because you're a 14-year-old hooker in, of all places, Hunts Point, doesn't mean you're still not a child, right? And you need help, right? You get your ass kicked by your pimp. Guess who's going to come take care of you? We are. If we happen to run over the pimp on the way to the call, so be it, right? But it was a place of survival, and we knew that we had each other's backs, and the community knew that we had their backs when they needed us.
So when was the first time that you remember having a really tough day at work? Either seeing something traumatic that stands out, or losing a firefighter? What comes to mind?
Yeah, it's glaringly obvious, and it's a very sad story. Just after my first year on the job, as a New York City fireman, your first year, you're a probationary fireman. You wear an orange patch on your helmet, so everybody knows you're a new guy, and everybody looks out for you and stuff. So I had just switched that patch out, and I was a real, fireman now. We had a fire at 9:00 in the morning, right across the street from the firehouse, the building right across, and the bells went off, and the people were banging on the garage door, screaming fire. And it's a little confusing because you're changing shifts, so you don't know which the night guy is going to jump on, or the day guy, or whatever. And so it was very confusing. So this building across the street was a 5-story, we call them old law tenement, loaded with kids, and not just kids, but kids that hung out in the firehouse. We knew all these kids, and we opened the garage door up, and there's the smoke pouring out of the 4th floor. And so some guys just run across the street before even putting their gear on, and some guys jump on the trucks because you need the trucks too, right? And my job was to help stretch the hose. So we stretched it up. I was number 2 on the line. Pete Duran was the nozzleman, and we had a problem getting water into the hose. It was one of those very cold February, I think, days, and so the ladder guys are in there. Their job is to do search and rescue ahead of the hose line. And this was a very occupied building, a lot of kids, and so they were very aggressive. The captain and two firefighters went in to search, and they're in there, and it's getting worse and worse, and we have no water in the hose, and it just starts, we call it boiling smoke, that's going to light up and explode at any minute. And I remember Danny comes out on all fours, out in the smoke, and he's screaming, and the skin is hanging off. He's all burned. The skin is hanging off of him. And then his partner, Pete, the rest of his soul, comes diving out horizontally, and he lands on top of the nozzleman Pete in front of me, and they go tumbling down the stairs together, and the skin is just hanging off of Pete. His mask is melted. He lost his helmet, and he's screaming. He's still in there. He's still in there. I couldn't get him. And that meant the captain was trapped. And so all of a sudden I was the first guy there, and I just dropped the hose, and I went crawling down the hallway as far as I could. And the heat was just unbearable. It was melting my helmet, we call them Bork shields. And I just can't go any further. And I realize I'm down about 15 feet down this very narrow hallway that's boiling. And when this thing lights up, I'm gonna get myself. I'm in trouble myself. And all the guys had piled in behind me, and I turned around to say, "Get out! Get out! Get out! It's gonna light up!" And I'm screaming, and when I turn my head around, my mask hits something, and I reach over, and it's the nozzle, and there's water in the hose. And so I take the nozzle, I go in. I'm very aggressive. I go in with the nozzle. I put out several rooms of fire, because when you put the fire out, your problems go away. I don't know where this captain is, right? And they had been yelling on the radio, "We got him. He's okay. We got him. He's out. He's safe." Unfortunately, that was not true. We had two captains working. It was very confusing. Someone saw the captain from the engine, said, "Okay, he's out. We got the captain." Meanwhile, the captain from the truck was still in there, and he was burned very badly. They pulled him out and took him to the hospital. He only lived a few days, and the burns killed him. So I lost just over 1 year on the job. I lost a captain in a fire where I was very involved, and the questioning, the guilt, the blame. Guys blame me for it. Really makes you question your career. And fortunately, I stuck it out. I didn't let those bad mouth guys get to me. I mean, they got to me, but I didn't let them change my career path. But in memory of Captain McDonald, he I wish we could have got him. We couldn't get him. So I mean, talk about a reality check. And I didn't know that would be the beginning of a career of lots of death and destruction and sadness. But also on the other side of that, heroism, courage, bravery, happiness at being able to save people, especially kids, in fires. I could even count the number of children I did CPR on, and I did mouth to mouth on, and they lived, and I feel great. It's pride, but not a selfish pride. Just proud that we were there and we could help, and I was trained to do that, and I was good at it, and I cared because this is a kid. We had a fire again down in the South Bronx. We had like 5 kids that we were doing CPR on, and the only kid that lived out of all of them was the one I had in my arms, because I did effective CPR, and I didn't mind. I mean, this was the 80s. This was even pre-AIDS. you know, and these terrible diseases that were, um, you know, transmissible, it didn't matter to me. You know, my life and my health is in God's hands, and if this kid needed me, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna go down on them, and I'm gonna breathe life into them if I possibly can. Um, so when you win, you don't win very often, but when you win, um, it's very gratifying, and it makes you very proud that you were able to help that person.
So with the captain and, you know, with those kids, for example, where 4 or 5 out of them didn't make it, do you know, obviously after the captain passed, you know, questioned your own abilities, right? This is a seasoned guy, he's a veteran,
Yeah.
and, you know, he didn't make it out, and obviously you were a brand new guy just off probation. But did there come a point where you just had to accept that death was part of the job and that you couldn't save everybody and you shouldn't dissect every situation and try to understand, okay, well, what if we did this? What if we did this? And that let that guilt take over and just understand that this is part of it and that's the deal.
Yeah, the hardest part, I think any fireman will tell you this, the hardest part is when you couldn't save your brother, because that is our ultimate responsibility, is to protect each other. Um, if you, I mean, you can't help but let something like that get to you. It just is going to. You know, we'll talk about therapy a bit later, but you know, back in the '80s, our therapy was the kitchen table with each other, our little tribe, our little family, right? Um, you know, things are different now with the available therapy, especially after 9/11. I want to talk about that later, but um, if you let the guilt get to you with every death, you will literally kill yourself. You will you will drink yourself to death, or you'll eat a bullet. Um, you can't. You have to figure out how to deal with it. Um, One of the things I did, I built a steam room in the firehouse, because I knew that physically being in smoke all day and breathing smoke and getting it all into your pores and is very physically unhealthy, right? We would sit in there and make it very hot because we wanted to make the other guy jump out, right? And prove who could stay in there. But you would actually see a stream of black coming out of your body and going down the drain of all that poison, right? That was exiting. But we would also have really cold beers that we would sit in there and drink beer after we were off and get healthy with the steam. But you know what it also did? We would sit in there and talk about the day together. And instead of just jumping in your car and going home to your family or your friends, we would sit in there for an hour or two. And and that was kind of our own kitchen table um, after work. It was really healthy and helpful, not just physically, but mental health wise, to be able to sit in there and talk about things that you didn't realize that guy did or that guy did, or what you could have done better, or you know where the mistakes were made, and to sit there and listen to the more experienced guys and give you advice and stuff like that. So um, you know, probably 9 out of 10 times we lose people. You know, we were going to lose them no matter what. Ray Graywin, one of my senior mentors, used to call them no impact fires. It really wouldn't have mattered if we showed up or not, because it's just doing what it's going to do, and we couldn't stop it. Um, and sometimes that happens, and there's nothing you can do. But then once in a while, you win, and you know, just like the rope rescues the other day, those people were in very, very bad trouble. One person jumped to their death out the window. That's how bad it was. But those guys that participated in those 3 rope rescues successfully, you can't have a better job in the world than that, right? And it's almost like they pay me to do this because this is the greatest job in the world. And they did it, and lots of things went wrong because it's chaos, but they did it successfully, and they saved a lot of people. Um, there's nothing greater than that. And right now, throughout America, firefighters, paramedics, um, EMTs, police officers are out there on the streets saving lives. Um, and a lot of times not successful, but many times, you know, they are successful. And man, we couldn't pay them enough money to do the jobs they do and put themselves in the danger that they put themselves in. And um, we owe them everything.
I agree with you. So, last thing before we get into 9/11, can you explain what Rescue 3 and that special operations job is? I think, that's funny. The last episode I had Brent Tucker in here, who's a Delta Force operator. So I'm
Mhm.
sure a lot of people that watch this, they think special operations and they think military. So
Yeah.
can you explain what that is and why it's widely known out to Miami, apparently?
Yeah. So, yeah, the special operations in the New York City Fire Department, in my day, was basically 5 rescue companies. We call them heavy rescues, one in each borough. Um, and it's loaded with special tools that a normal engine company or ladder company would not carry. Along with all those special tools and equipment is a group of 6 firefighters who are all expert in all those tools. So for special things like complicated auto extrications, building collapses, um, uh, shipboard firefighting, subway crashes, subway firefighting, high rise, 5 levels underground in a car garage, then you got 5 cars on fire. Um, breathing apparatus that will last for 4 hours, right? And so the the men and women in the rescue companies are trained in all of these. It's extensive training that is above and beyond a regular New York City firefighter. So what we call him Chief D Bernardo, the deputy chief. It was always he always said the rescue company was his ace in the hole, his ace in the deck. When things went south, when things went bad, he knew that the rescue company was going to be the one that fixed the problem for him. The many times he would see me coming up to the scene, and he would point at a window that's above the fire, and he would tell me, "Timmy, get up, get up to that room. Nobody's been up there yet. Get up to that room and search," because he knew someone was in there or whatever. He knew he could rely on the rescue company. And then the rescue companies know that they can rely on each other, right? So when when the signal 1066 is given in the New York City Fire Department, it means there's a member trapped and missing, and that automatically sends 2 additional rescue companies from different boroughs screaming to this disaster or this fire or whatever it is. That's what we do. We take care of the firemen. If the firemen get trapped, the rescue guys, that's their main job, is to go find go find that trapped firefighter and save their life. Um, then when a rescue company gets trapped, that's a problem. Um, and then you'll call in the rescue companies from different parts of the city. Um, it is a place of pride. Um, it's a place of honor. Uh, to have spent 7 years in a rescue company is, for me, a pinnacle. I could not have hoped when I was 15 years old for a better career path, a better life. Um, I was honored to be a part of it. Um, I think we did a lot of good. I worked with some of the best firemen in the world. I learned from them. I I witnessed the greatest rescue, not 9/11, the greatest rescue I've seen in 30 or whatever years of firefighting happened in front of my eyes. A fireman I worked with, I'll just call him Sam. Uh, I watched him dive into the fire and throw 4 firemen who were trapped out through the flames. I watched it with my own eyes. I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't see it with my own eyes. And and then he just puts his hands in his pockets and walks away. We get on the truck and we go to another call, and nobody speaks of it. Um, those were the quality of men I worked with, and those are the quality of men who often paid the price. Um, we put ourselves in the most difficult and dangerous environments. We usually get away with it because we're really good, but once in a while we didn't get away with it. So we suffer more casualties probably in the rescue companies, and certainly that was demonstrated on the day of 9/11, where 100 of the 343 heroes in the New York City Fire Department were special operations firefighters. From Chief Ray Downey, the father of the modern rescue company in America, the guy who helped create and invent the FEMA urban search and rescue teams in America. Um, our leader, I'm proud to say, um, from Chief Ray all the way down to the newest guy that came into a newly created squad company, becoming a new special operations fireman, right? So that's where I worked for 7 years leading up to 9/11, um, and those are the guys that I guess was blessed to tell them I love them in the last moments of their lives.
Any other specific calls or rescues stand out from your time at Rescue 3?
Yeah, I mean, there were so many things we did. We were the collapse rescue for the entire city, so we had a tractor trailer loaded with wood and special tools for building collapses. That we had lights and sirens. So we had a tractor trailer with lights and sirens. We drove around the city, and when we did a lot of that, we were citywide. Um, we we helped many of the other rescue companies. We helped them when they needed help. Um, the one fire was actually I was in ladder 4 in Times Square. I guess it was like 90, somewhere in there, 1990. And my best friend Terry Hatton was my lieutenant, and we had a daytime fire just below Times Square, and it was rubbish in an alleyway between 2 old law tenements. So they're older brick and wood joist buildings, and the rubbish in this shaft was just roaring. So the fire got into both buildings very quickly, and there were people out the windows. It was just a bad daytime fire. And Terry, lieutenant at the time, Hatton, and I wound up on the hose line in the top floor of one of these old law tenements, and the chief is screaming, "Get out, get out, get out." And I wound up on the nozzle, and Terry knew, I was a very good nozzleman, South Bronx nozzleman. And so he didn't give me the nozzle. We found the nozzle and picked it up, and he just put his shoulder in my back. And you could see, it's like a movie, right? The fire was blowing out of the peephole that you look out of your apartment. The fire was a jet, and you could see the frame of the door. You could see the fire, the orange glow. So it's around the edges of the door. So as soon as you can get that door open, that fire's on top of you. And so we go in there, and it was the layout of the apartment was difficult. It had extremely heavy fire, but I had in my back with his shoulder Lieutenant Terry Hatton, my best friend, one of the toughest firemen of our generation, medals and medals and medals. And we had confidence and faith in each other, in our abilities, in our training, in our experience. And I had been wearing the fireproof pants called bunker pants, but they weren't standard issue yet. And I'm going through this hallway, putting out rooms of fire, and our feet are actually going through the floor because the floor was burned through. And the fire was coming up underneath us from the floor below. And I finally ran out of air in my mask, in my air pack. And so Terry comes up, he's behind me, but he takes the nozzle. He goes another room, he puts out another room of fire. And then he goes to the front window and he slams the nozzle on the front window, and there's the chief right there. And he takes his mask out and he yells to the chief, "We got it, chief." You know, it's a point of pride, right? You know, nobody else could do it. We did it. Really, he did it. And we get down in the street afterwards, and he gives me a high five. He's like, "Great job, brother. Great job. That was awesome." And I look at him, and he's not wearing the fireproof pants. All he has is his rubber boots on that only come up above your knee. And the part between your waist and your knees is a pretty important part
I'd say
of
so,
your
yeah.
body, right? And that guy went through that fire with me, basically exposed. And my jaw went on the floor. I was like, holy crap. That's one of the bravest guys I ever knew. And I lost that guy. But while I had him, we did some good things, man. We helped a lot. We were good at what we did. And I miss that.
Thank you for sharing that. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll get into 9/11. What's up, guys? I hope you're enjoying the interview with Tim. Real quick, I know it's been a couple months since the last interview with Brent Tucker, and so I just wanted to take a second to thank you guys for your support and really your patience as I figure out kind of how to grow this thing, right? Make it more scalable, make it more repeatable, and that way I can get you guys more content on a more regular basis. And so I said this in the last one as well, but everything you see on this channel right now, I do it all myself on top of a full-time job. So that's essentially the reason why it's taken so long. That and really just trying to build it and stand it up and fly people out here and get them to talk to us. So again, thank you for your patience in the wait for this interview here. But this time I actually have 2 more interviews already recorded as you're watching this one. One of which is with a former Delta Force commander who now hunts sex traffickers, and the other with a ex-international arms dealer who had a Hollywood movie made about his life. So both of them are awesome, and I can't wait for you guys to see them. But again, both of those just need to be edited, but I already have them, so it won't be another 3 months between this right now and the next interview being uploaded. And so last thing, if you get anything out of these interviews at all, please like the video, leave me a comment, tell me what you thought, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, share this video with your friends and family, because the people that Tim talks about in this interview, they are legitimate American heroes, and their stories deserve to be heard, and they deserve to be shared far and wide. So again, thank you guys so much for your support. Thank you so much for your time in taking the time to watch this interview, and back to the show. 9/11.
Yeah.
You go to sleep on September 10th. You wake up on the 11th, and take us from there.
Yeah, it was just a normal day going into work. I was now wearing a tie, working for the Mayor's Office of Emergency Management as the supervisor for field operations. My job was to go to the scene with, my team, of bigger disasters and emergencies and represent the mayor to ensure that the 10, 12, or 25 different entities who were needed to mitigate were working well together and to support them in anything they needed with the power of the mayor behind it, right? So, I had like this undercover Crown Vic police car thing. So I drove into work. I parked it down at 7 World Trade Center. I parked on VC Street. And I go in, my office was on the 23rd floor of 7 World Trade Center. It's where our emergency operations center was. Like the state-of-the-art, brand new command center that was there to support the mayor of the city of New York. And before I went upstairs, I always stopped on the 3rd floor mezzanine to have my Cheerios and my orange juice and my hot tea and read newspapers, because back then we didn't have the smartphones. And so I had physical copies of the local newspapers, and I would go through all of them just to make sure I knew all the news that was in the city, everything that was happening, so to be prepared on behalf of the mayor, in case things developed. I always wanted to have that current knowledge. And so I was just sitting there in the cafeteria by myself, reading the newspaper, eating my Cheerios, and the power went out. Modern high-rise building, complete power outage, not good. 5 seconds later, the power comes on, and I know we're on our backup generators. Something happened. I don't know what it is. But in that 5 seconds, the people who were facing the glass that was looking toward the North Tower all at once, jumped up from their tables and went running by me toward the exit. And I had to grab one young lady by the shoulders and shake her. I'd look at her in the eye and shake her and bring her back to reality. And I said, "What happened?" And she said, "A plane hit the tower." And that was the first I knew. And, we call it the big one. It's what we train and drill and prepare for. But not unprecedented. We had had planes or helicopters fly into buildings before in New York City. But this was going to be a challenge. And I knew it would be a full activation. So I went up to the 23rd floor to our watch command, which is the radios, our listening post, kind of the radios and the phones and all that stuff, and notification center. And the supervisor there was Mike Lee, and I yelled across the room because by now all the phones were ringing off the hook. The radios were screaming. Michael had 2 phones, one on each ear like this, talking, and he had one in his hand. And I just yelled across the room to him. I said, "Mike, full activation." And he kind of gave me a thumbs up. And that's a hard thing to do for them because they only have 4 or 5 people and they have to make 150 phone calls plus all the incoming calls. And coordinate all that. I ran over to the Emergency Operations Center, and the supervisor there on the deck there was Mike Berkowitz. And I yelled across the room, "Mike, full activation." And he gave me the thumbs up. He was bringing up all the computers already. Soon that room would be flooded with 150 people from different city, state, federal, and private sector partners in support of the incident commander, in support of the mayor. I went to my desk and grabbed my police radio, my fire radio, put them in my back pockets, and my OEM radio in my hand. I went down to my car on VZ Street, opened the trunk up, took off my tie, dress shirt, and jacket, threw them in the trunk, put on the windbreaker that said mayor's office on the breast and the big one on the back, my heavy leather boots, and they made us wear these stupid green helmets so people knew who we were. And we're trained, and through experience, we know that before you go into a building under destruction by collapse or fire or whatever, you always try and get a look at three sides of the building so you have a current size up in your head. And I wanted to take just a minute or two before I went into the building where I was supposed to be at the command post. I wanted to take that minute or two just to look at the building. And in order to do that, I had to run up an exterior concrete staircase from street level to plaza level, the plaza that was in between the World Trade Center complex. It's an important part of the story because I'm running up that stairs toward the building because that's what we do. First responders, police officers, firefighters, anyone that takes an oath like that, we're going to help people. So I'm running up those stairs. Within 30 minutes, hundreds or thousands of innocent office workers would run down that stairwell and run away to safety. That staircase becomes known as the survivor's staircase because it saves so many people's lives. And it is the biggest, heaviest artifact in the 9/11 museum. And there's a wonderful photo, not a terribly wonderful photo, of people covered in the dust and debris going down that stairwell and living. But I'm running up this staircase. I look out over the plaza, and it's strewn with debris, building parts, plane parts, office parts, on fire, black smoke, white smoke. And if you remember looking at the video from that day, all the paper that was knocked out of the offices up top in the tower is fluttering down like this, like snow. And that's what it looked like, just like you see in the video. And it was the first time I questioned my assumption, which was, I think, the same as many people's assumption, that it was a small plane. The pilot had a heart attack, went off course, hit the tower. This has happened before. But I started to question that assumption because of the amount of debris and destruction. I went into that North Tower at that plaza level, and right in front of me was an escalator, and I had to go down one level back to the street level inside the building because that's where the command post was. And there were hundreds of office workers, civilian office workers, like a funnel, trying to get on that escalator. And I noticed something in that moment that struck me, that they were not doing what I thought they would be doing. They weren't pushing, trampling, running over each other, knocking each other out of the way. It was the opposite. For every person who was obese, pregnant, disabled, injured, there were 4 or 5 office workers, not first responders, helping that person. And it gave me for the first time that morning, it gave me the first glimpse of what humanity really is. And that 99% of people will help a person in distress and will do their best to help that person. If we went outside today, Dalton, and someone tripped on the sidewalk, the first thing we do is try and help them from falling or to pick them up if they do fall, right? It's just a natural response. And that is true of 99% of humanity. And I saw that occurring very early this morning on September 11th, right in front of my eyes. I got into that funnel of people and I got on the escalator to go down one level. And as we're going down the escalator, the lobby starts to reveal itself to us, right? And I could see hundreds of firefighters in their protective gear with the yellow stripes awaiting their orders to go up. Hundreds of them. And in that moment, as much as it pains me, I had to admit that the cops were right for once. Because the cops called us bumblebees. And I could see exactly why they called us bumblebees now. And I had to admit they were right, which kills me all the time. But they're right. This was hundreds of bumblebees, heroes. I wind up calling that the hive of heroes, right? All waiting their orders to go up with all their equipment and double the amount of equipment they would normally carry. I got to the bottom of the escalator, and then right there in front of me is a bumblebee, and I look up at his face, and it's my friend, firefighter Chris Blackwell from Rescue 3, right? Not just a firefighter, not just a badass Bronx Harlem firefighter, but my friend, who I had worked with for 7 years, not just in the company, but on the same shift. So we did everything together. We had done so much good for so many people together. He was like my real brother. And we were the Bronx Harlem guys. We weren't the Manhattan guys. So we didn't follow the rules quite as much. Chris's gear was kind of burned up from all the fires that he was in. The reflective stripes were kind of hanging off. He didn't really shave for a couple days. His face was all smudged from the fires and smoke he went through. And his helmet was so melted that it sat crooked on his head. And so he was like this caricature of a salty senior Bronx Harlem fireman. But he would leave work, he would get in his car and go home to Connecticut where he grew up and where he lived. And he was a paramedic in his home community. So all Chris did his whole adult life was help other people. Chris was so good at what he did and had so much respect in the Bronx Harlem Fire Department that anytime we had a patient or a victim, especially if it was a child, we would always look for Chris's hands to put that victim in, because we knew in his hand that child had the best chance at living. Get to the bottom of the escalator. He's there, just like poof. And we always greeted each other the same way, no matter what was happening around us. And so we saw each other. We came a few feet apart. We stood at attention. With his right hand, he reaches over, in a big arc, he takes the unlit stub of a cigar out of his mouth. He puts it back down at his side. We both lean in from the hips, kiss on the lips, and then we come back to attention, and he does the same motion with the cigar, and he puts it back in his mouth. And we did this for two reasons, right? We did it because we loved each other. I grew up with three brothers. We kissed on the lips. We kissed our dad on the lips. It was not weird or anything. And Chris and I were like brothers. We loved each other. With every ounce of our being, we loved each other. Reason number two, it freaked out all the firemen around us, and we loved watching their reaction to us doing this. So it was very funny. So we had that moment in the North Tower lobby on the morning of September 11th And after we went through the motions, Chris said to me, "I love you." He said, "Timmy, this is really bad." And I said, "I love you, brother. Be careful." And he said, "I love you too." And he turned around and he went in the stairwell and he went up to save the lives of people he did not know. Right? In that moment, Dalton, in that moment, Chris made a choice. He could have taken his helmet off and turned around and went home to his lovely children and wife. Or he could go up the stairs to save the lives of people he did not know. And he made that choice and he went up the stairwell. Why? He did it because 15 years earlier he had taken an oath. And that oath said, the words say, "I'm willing to give up my life for someone I don't know. I'm willing to give up my life for my neighbor, to save their life." Right? Chris had taken this oath. In that moment, he made a conscious decision to follow through on those words in action, in deed. To go up those stairs to save the lives of people he didn't know. And it seems to me I've read that in a book somewhere before. Happens to be the most popular book in the world, called the Bible. And it says right in there that giving up your life for someone you don't know, for your neighbor, is an act of the greatest love. So in the end, that's what Chris chose to do. With the last act of his life, he chose that act to demonstrate the love he had for his fellow humans. In fact, that is exactly what every one of the 343 heroes, the 30 fire department heroes, the 37 Port Authority police officer heroes, the 23 NYPD police heroes, all the others, the court officers who did the same thing. All those people in the end of their life chose to fulfill their oath and to perform acts of the greatest love known to man. Someone yelled my name across the hive of heroes where all the bumblebees were waiting to go up. And I looked over, and you can actually, you question your memory on history sometimes, right? And sometimes you don't remember certain details, and then you remember them or whatever. So when I got a copy of the Naudet brothers raw video footage from inside the North Tower lobby, I go through it meticulously and to try and pick out who's on the video and who's not. And I got a clean copy of it from the Naudet brothers, and the brilliance of a clean copy is that the audio is very good, and so I actually hear my best friend, now Captain Terry Hatton. Him yelling my name is actually recorded on the video, so it confirms what I remember, which is really helpful. And so my best friend, Captain Terry Hatton, now the captain of Rescue 1, the Manhattan Elite, right, in the spotlight. And he was put there not just because of all of the medals of bravery he had been awarded, but Terry was really smart and he was by the book. And the leadership of the New York City Fire Department was trying to mold him and put him on a path to be the chief of the entire New York City Fire Department. That was what they were hoping to do with him, to mentor him to become that guy. And they trusted him in that position, very high profile. And they trusted that he would run a very excellent rescue company in the heart of Times Square, where all the cameras are. So I run to my best friend. He was 6'4". With his boots and helmets on, he was 6'7", 6'8". So I could see him over the top of all the other bumblebees. And I ran to him and I wrapped my arms kind of around his chest. And he came down over the top of me like a monster, like a huge guy. And he just overwhelmed me and I got lost in his hug. And he pulled me tight to his chest and he kissed me right here on my right cheek. And he said in my ear, for me only, he said, "I love you, brother. I may never see you again." And I blew him off. I didn't take those words seriously because we had done all these things together. Bad fires, building collapses, Oklahoma City, the first World Trade Center, just we had challenged fate and challenged death so many times together. And we were really good at what we did. And we came out pretty much unscathed. And so that's where my head was. But remember, I said he's the smart one. You know, he had come down the West Side Highway with his binoculars sitting in the front seat, counting the number of floors on fire, knowing that this was a much bigger disaster than even I realized. He knew it already. And he knew going in that stairwell might be one of the last acts of his life. And after he said, "I love you, brother, I may never see you again," he turned around, he went in the stairwell, and with his men, and they went up. And he made it up to the 83rd floor, we believe, with his men, where they were fighting the fire, saving lives, when an interior early collapse occurred and trapped them. And Terry was yelling for help in the radio, the worst thing a fireman could ever say or hear. "Mayday, mayday, mayday, rescue 1 is trapped," in the 80s. "Mayday, mayday, mayday, rescue 1 is trapped." So now you have the rescue company, who are the guys who are supposed to rescue the trapped firemen. Now they are trapped themselves. I obviously did not hear him say this. I did not hear my best friend call for help, or I would have been up the stairs myself, and I would have joined him in his heroism. But other guys heard him yelling for help on the radio, and they later told me. So that's how I know the story. A fireman came running into the lobby of the North Tower, yelling, "Another plane hit the South Tower. The South Tower just got hit by another plane." And we didn't see it or hear it, or at least I didn't. But that moment right there was a very sobering moment for each one of us. We knew that we were under attack, and we were in the middle of it. We knew firemen were going to die. And there was really nothing we could do about it. The leadership, these chiefs, knew that they were sending their troops to their death. So the leadership gathered up, and we had a quick discussion on how we were going to split our forces between the two towers. It was decided that Assistant Chief Donald Burns from the fire department and me from the mayor's office would go to the South Tower and open up that command post to manage that disaster that's happening at the exact same time as the North Tower disaster, kind of in the same place. And we still don't know how many more planes are coming. Assistant Chief Donald Burns, 41 years in the New York City Fire Department at the time. Arguably the most respected chief in the entire New York City Fire Department. Another big guy. If you looked up in the dictionary Irish fire chief, it would be his mug with the red rosy cheeks, the lines of experience all permanently etched in his face, blue eyes. And I don't know how he did it, but when he talked, only this side of his mouth worked, this side stayed shut, and he talked out of the side of his mouth like Popeye. And he had a thicker New York accent because he grew up in the outer boroughs. And he was my friend. And so we're running from the North Tower to the South Tower, and I say to him, "Chief, what do you need me to do?" And out of the side of his mouth, he said, "Timmy, there's not much you and I can do. I've ordered a 5th alarm for our building, but the first 5 alarms are going to that building. So do your best and be careful. We'll have to wait a while for ours." And he also did say, we're at war. Because we knew. A woman came running over to us screaming that people were trapped in an elevator. And so Chief gave me the nod, go with her. He went to the command post. I followed her. We came to this one elevator hoistway doors, and the hoistway doors are open, so you can see into the shaft, but the elevator car had not come down all the way. And just at the top of the opening, you could see into the car where all the people's feet are. And it wasn't a small elevator, like it wasn't 8 people, it was like 35 people or 50 people, I don't know. It was one of the big express elevators. And it was only this much you could see into the car, about 6 or 8 inches. And the people were screaming in the elevator, and I remember seeing the men's dress shirts and jackets as they were leaning down and crouched down and trying to pull the car down a little bit more, just a few more inches so people could start sliding out. But they couldn't move it. It wouldn't budge. I didn't know it at the time. I learned this later, that elevator car had free-fallen 70 floors. Because when Flight 175 crashed into the building, it snapped the cable for that car. And so that car had free-fallen 70 floors with these people in it thinking that they were dead when it hit the concrete. But the emergency brakes kicked on and worked the way they were supposed to and stopped it from hitting that concrete pit and killing them. But now those elevator brakes are locked on, and no human strength is going to move that car. So it's just stuck there. And the elevator pit below them is full of jet fuel that's on fire. And so now they're getting burned. And I'm the first responder to the scene, this horrific scene. And I'm completely useless. I'm a mayor's office guy. I'm not a fireman. What they need was a fireman. And in my horror and disbelief at what was happening in front of me, watching these people get burned, I turned to see if I could see someone or something to help. And when I turned, my shoulder hit a person who had come up behind me, and I looked over, and it was a bumblebee. And I looked up at his face, and it was firefighter Mike Lynch, who I had worked with in Midtown in Times Square. And he put his hand on my shoulder, and he squeezed my shoulder, and he said, "Timmy, I got it." 3 words. He saw the look in my face. He saw what was happening with those poor people. And he was already formulating his plan on how he was going to save their lives. I later tell his widow, Denise, that when he said those words to me, he may as well have had angel wings coming out of his back, because he was the angel that just appeared out of nowhere to save the lives of those people. I'll come back to this scene. Over my radio, urgent, 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 confirmed by the FBI, third plane incoming, it's ours, impact imminent, take cover, urgent, 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 get in the stairwells. So I told Mike the Angel, I gotta go. I went to the command post. I felt we couldn't do our jobs, or the firemen couldn't do their jobs and save lives if planes kept crashing into us. We had to stop this from happening. And I felt, being the mayor's office, that was my responsibility. And so I went back to the command post and I found a landline, a hard line that worked. I dialed 0 for operator, and she picked up right away. And I said, I'm with Mayor Giuliani in the World Trade Center. I need to speak with the White House immediately. And she tried to get through. She couldn't get through. I said, okay, then the Pentagon. And she said, the Pentagon's under attack also, which was the first we knew of it. I said, New York State Emergency Management. So she put me through to them. I talked to them for 5 seconds. I said, we need fighter jets. We need protection. And they told me they've already been scrambled. They should be overhead shortly. Okay, checkbox. The lobby was filling up with people who were badly injured. Bloody, burned, broken, smoke inhalation. And what was happening was the stairwells were very narrow. And these people were going down 70, 80 floors around and around and around in a dark, wet, smoky, narrow stairwell. So you could only do single file down and single file up, right? So the civilians were going down, the cops and firemen were going up. The civilians were yelling words of encouragement to the cops and firemen who were climbing 60, 70 floors with 60 or 100 pounds of equipment. But these people going down were in single file, and they had to go as slow as the slowest person in front of them, even if that person was injured or whatever, right? And so it was a very slow slog down this dark, smoky, wet stairwell, knowing that things are not getting better. So they would get to the door that says lobby on it, and they would bust the door open, and it would be bright and light and no smoke and cops and firemen. And so what do you do if you're injured after this journey? You're like, I'm safe, and you collapse on the floor. I made it. I'm safe, right? So we had all these injured people all over the lobby of the South Tower. So Chief Burns grabbed me and said, Timmy, go get the paramedics and get them in here. We've got to start getting these people out. Normally, the paramedics would stay in a place of safety. They would triage what the cops and firemen brought to them. But however, this time all the cops and firemen are going up the stairwell, so we had to change how we did things. That's the reason I left the South Tower lobby. I went out on Liberty Street, and right there, forever burned into my visual memory, in the middle of Liberty Street, was a dead fireman who had just been crushed by a woman who jumped. And it had just happened right as I went out the door. And his buddies, his comrades, were tugging at what was his body, but now it's two bodies smushed together, thinking that they could save him. But he was killed on impact. I saw Mike the Angel one more time. He was at his fire truck, taking the spreaders from the hydraulic spreaders from the jaws of life off, that he was going to use on that elevator car to increase that opening to get those people out. And he yelled to me because he needed help. The motor's very heavy. And he yelled to me. So I started running toward him, but another fireman got there to help him. And so Mike the Angel and I waved. And that was the last time I saw my friend Mike alive. He winds up saving 3 people out of that elevator car, 3 women who identify him by his picture, and they're like, "Yeah, that's the guy with the red 4 in his hat." They call it hat. He saved my life. So we can pretty much prove 3 people before the building collapses and kills him and the rest of the folks he was trying to get out of there. So in the last moment of Mike the Angel's life, again, he was performing an act of the greatest love. Just like Terry, just like Chris, just like Paddy Brown, just like Mike Lynch. I find the paramedics on the West Side Highway underneath the South pedestrian walkway that they were using for cover. And it just happened to be the special operations paramedics that I had responded to Oklahoma City and the Atlanta Olympic bombing with and all these other things I had done. So I knew them very well, especially their boss, their captain, Charlie Wells, was a very good friend of mine. And so I ran to Charlie and I said, "Charlie, we need you guys to triage inside." And he was like, "No, we're all set up here. Have them bring them out." I was like, "There's nobody to bring them out. They're all the firemen and cops are going up, and we need you to move in." So we had to change it. So they got all their stuff and threw all their medical stuff and threw it on the stretcher, and they put on their helmets. And myself, Charlie, and 2 other paramedics, the 4 of us went running back to go into the South Tower lobby. And we're on the sidewalk on Liberty Street, going along the south wall of 3 World Trade Center, which was the Marriott Hotel. And particularly by one door that was the door into the Tall Ships restaurant, that was the restaurant in the lobby of the hotel, right? And the South Tower, 2 World Trade Center, was set back on the sidewalk a little bit, so it was set deeper, right? And so when you came around the corner of 3 World Trade Center, you had to kind of make a turn and go toward the South Tower door. And we made that turn, and we were about 20 feet from the door into the South Tower lobby when the building collapsed. If we had crossed over that threshold into the building, we probably would not have heard it immediately like we did. The first piece of steel that snapped up there was so loud that it echoed through the canyons of Lower Manhattan like a bomb went off. Nobody had to look at each other and question what was that. Everybody knew exactly what it was. You just knew. It was just so loud. And we're trained as firefighters, and through our experience, you can never outrun a building collapse. It will always catch you and kill you. It happens too quickly. You have to seek immediate cover. And that's exactly what I thought of when I heard the crack, the snap. We were not in a good place to be. But it gave us a couple of seconds to run back to that door into the Tall Ships restaurant that we had just passed. So I yelled to the paramedics, "Follow me." I think one of them did, 2 of them didn't. We all lived, thank God. Thank God. But I go into that door into the Tall Ships restaurant, and it was as clear as this room is. And with a snap of your fingers, it was pitch black. The South Tower was collapsing onto the Marriott Hotel, and the Marriott Hotel was collapsing around us. I hit the ground. Everything that wasn't nailed down was flying in our faces. I lost all contact with any other human. You couldn't hear, you couldn't see. The dust was so thick that it clogged your nose and your mouth and your ears and your eyes. I was trying to stick my mouth into my t-shirt to try and filter the dust out a little bit so I could breathe. And I just started crawling hoping to find a vertical column, because I know in a building collapse, sometimes we find people alive next to vertical columns, because that's a strongest part of a building. And so I can't breathe. I can't hear. I compare it, the noise, to sitting on the tarmac at JFK, surrounded by 747s full blast. And every time you thought it was the loudest thing you ever heard in your life, it would increase by like 10 times as the collapse got closer and closer. All that air that was being pushed out of the hotel as it collapsed was now exiting where I was. I found a big vertical column, or I am a faithful guy. I think I was led to it. I wrapped my arms around this huge column and I squeezed as hard as I could. I tried to get inside the concrete. And the wind was so strong it blew my helmet off my head, and then it lifted my body off the ground. And I was horizontal, holding on to this vertical column. And this is the moment that I was saying goodbye. This is the moment that I said, my 9 lives have run out. This is the moment I was so sad that I wouldn't be able to say I love you to my brothers and sister one more time. And I prayed to God, I'm not afraid to come to you. I'm not afraid to sit at your feet. I'm really not. I'm a believer. I have my own way of going about things, but I am a strong believer. And I just said, I'll come to you, just please, not now, please. I just want to tell my brother and my sister, my brothers and sister, that I love them one more time, and then I'll come. But please let me. And, seemed like forever, but a few seconds later, the noise stopped, the wind stopped, and I was alive. They did a scientific study of that space where we were, because it was the largest group of survivors, and they wanted to know, why did this particular place yield so many lives, where everybody else was killed. Everybody on the whole, whatever, 18 acres was killed. Why did this group of people live? And a couple of things. It was the part that was rebuilt after the 1993 bombing, and so the iron workers used iron that was much bigger than it needed to be. So that structure was very much stronger. That's probably the column I grabbed onto, was one of the new columns that was replaced. But they actually brought in a volcanologist, scientist, to study the space. And he found a piece of glass that was jammed into the concrete and steel. And he scientifically proved, this is published, that the wind where I was, that was lifted me off the ground, that was trying to blow me out into the street, was 185 miles per hour. So that, there is no way I held on to that column by myself with human strength. So I had help. He wanted me to survive this. I believe that to this day. And I'm trying to fulfill his calling for me for the rest of my life. So the wind stops. I try to go out the way we had come in, but you can't see, you can't breathe. It's pitch black because the dust is so thick. And I'm crawling, and I find this truck with the headlights on, and the diesel motor is running. And I would have thought that I would have recognized it as a fire truck if it was a fire truck. And that would have made some sense, because everything is all mixed up, right? But I didn't. And all I could think of was that it was a truck bomb, because I just went back to what I knew from 1993. Not only did they crash planes, but now they drove a truck bomb, and this thing's going to go off. And so I really wanted to live. So I turned around, I went deeper into the Tall Ships restaurant. I came to a roll down gate that was down, metal roll down gate that was down. In the end, we figured out that it was the roll down gate between the restaurant and the lobby of the Marriott when the restaurant was closed, right? And so I put my fingers under it to lift it up a little bit because I was still trying to get away from that, what I thought was a truck bomb. And when I lifted it up, all these fingers came from the other side, human fingers. And we lifted it up together, and it was a group of firefighters and civilians who they were rescuing. And I yelled to them, "There's a bomb. Go that way. Run, run, run. Go that way." And they said to me, "There is no that way. We can't go anywhere. We're trapped." And what had happened is the collapse came right through where they were in the lobby. They were saving these people's lives. The collapse came through. It killed half the group that they were with. So other group of firemen and other civilians they were rescuing were killed when the collapse came through the lobby. But these people were on a ledge that was a couple feet wide. And on one side was 7 stories down, and on the other side was this metal roll down gate. So we lifted the gate up. They said, "We can't go that way." So we turned around, we went back toward the truck bomb. And one of the women in our group saw a bright flashlight from the outside. There was a fireman who saw us in the rubble, and he was waving his light at us, he's yelling, "Come this way, come this way." So we formed the chain, and we all went toward him, and we got out. I thought at that point, for some reason, that it would be a good idea to jump in the Hudson River and swim to New Jersey. Very bad idea. Don't ever try that. But I wasn't thinking rationally. But I wanted to get away. I wanted to get away from being dead. What brought me back to reality was my boss, Calvin, who just passed, was trapped in the rubble, and he was screaming for help. And that snapped me back into reality. And I ran up the West Side Highway toward Calvin, where he was trapped. I ran by Chief Downey and Commissioner Feehan, my 2 good friends, and they were waving at me, and they were yelling, "Timmy, be careful, Timmy, be careful." Within 10 minutes, they'd be dead, and I'd be alive from the North Tower collapse. I found Calvin. The paramedics already had him. I kept running north with my bigger boss, John Odermatt, a 1-star NYPD boss. We were trying to catch up to the mayor, and I turned around. Someone behind me screamed, and I turned around to look, and I saw the antenna of the North Tower like lean over a little bit and then go down and disappear. And I knew that all those bumblebees were dying in front of my eyes. The cloud comes over us. We get pelted by debris again, but we live. And we survived. A few of us survived. So that's kind of the story of the day. I wanted to go back to Angel Mike, the firefighter Mike Lynch, because I went out to his home in Long Island because I wanted his widow, Denise, to hear directly from me what her hero angel husband was doing at the end of his life. And when I went and sat on their couch in their living room, and I told her the story of his heroism, there were 2 little boys crawling around on the floor. Brand new little boys. And I told her, I pointed at them, and I gave her my business card, and I said, "One day when those boys are older and they want to know about their dad, tell them to reach out to me, and I'll tell them about their dad's last moment." About 5 years ago, I got an email from Michael Francis Lynch Jr., who now was 21, 22 years old. And he's like, I did everything right with my life. My dad would be proud. I got my degree. I've done everything. Now I want to know about my dad. And I want to talk with you. So we met at our favorite place, O'Hara's. And we drank beer for about 5 hours together and talked and cried and laughed and got to know each other. And one of the things he asked me was, please never leave me, because he had been, left alone. And I promised him I would never leave him. And I said, what do you want to do with your life? He said, I want to be a Green Beret. And I said, that's awesome. I said, don't sign anything. You don't always get the straight facts. So let me take some time. Let me take you on a tour of the East Coast to go meet all my friends in the different branches of the military and the intelligence community. And we did that. And all of a sudden, Mike Francis Lynch Jr. had a whole tribe. Of uncles and aunts who all took his phone number and showed him the love the community has for him. Some pretty cool people, man. Some cool Navy SEALs, some cool Delta guys, some cool people from the intelligence community. And he came back, and we were sitting with one of my best friends, Navy SEAL Jason Redmond, and some other folks. And I said, okay, you did what I asked. Now what do you want to do? He said, I want to be a SEAL. I said, that's what I thought you would say. But I wanted him to come to it himself, And so we started mentoring him, and we wound up sending him to a group of guys down in Alexandria, Virginia. They own a gym down there called Trident Fitness. And first they gave him, as they would, a very hard time. And then once they realized he was not going to wilt, they started partnering with him and training him. And it was guys from all different branches of special forces. And they literally gave him mentors from each group. And these guys drowned him 5 times because he refused to come off the bottom of the pool because his father would have been disappointed in him. They literally had to dive in and pull his body out 5 times and do CPR and bring him back because the kid was so stubborn. And he wanted to make everyone proud of him, which we all were and are. So he went through all of this for years. And just now, a few weeks ago, he called me and said, I signed up. And I said, okay, what'd you sign up for? And he said, what is the contract?
18 X-ray, I think it is.
18 X-ray. He said, I signed an 18 X-ray contract to be a Green Beret. So he's in. He's probably starting basic right around now.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he will be one of the greatest military special forces, I'll call them heroes, that they're ever going to see. That's my opinion. He is driven from a different place, somewhere deep in here and deep in here, because of losing his dad such a young age, and his dad being such an American hero. So I'm really proud of Mike. I'm so proud of Mike. And we should be doing that for all of our heroes' kids. Every one of them that grew up without a dad or a mom because of 9/11, or that includes the 7,000 plus military heroes, volunteer military heroes who gave their lives for this country. Every one of their children, those Gold Star kids, it's our responsibility as a community to take care of them and mentor them and become their tribe, become their aunts and uncles and big brothers and big sisters. We owe it to them, to their families. And this brings us to the mantra, never forget, right? Every bumper sticker of every fireman's car throughout America in the days, weeks, and months and years after 9/11 says never forget 9/11, right? Every fire truck you look at probably around America says never forget on it. And those words are important. And the word never is important, right? Never forget. So this is a part of it, mentoring these kids and taking care of them and giving them a break and introducing them to the right people. That's our responsibility as a community to do that. So it's a mission I did not ask for. I don't have my own kids. It's not a mission I asked for. It's not a mission I sought after. It's a mission that God gave me, and I didn't know it. He's sneaky like that sometimes. I didn't know it until I was in it and I was doing it. And then there were more and more and more of them calling me and asking me, and more of them to help mentor, So I'm a strong believer. I don't have my own children, but I have a whole tribe of young people who I love and try to help.
Wow, man, that's so that's great to hear about Mike. And Mike, if you're watching this by chance, when you get off active duty, I'd like to have you sitting right where your Uncle Tim's sitting,
Right.
and talk about your time in service.
He would laugh his ass off if he heard that right now.
Oh, I'd love it. I'd love it. So the one thing on the day that, excuse me, I wanted to ask you about that you didn't cover is Paddy Brown and where he was, because I think there was a recording of him, I believe, and I think he was on the radio, and he said this is a 3 truck and we're still going up.
Yes.
Dispatch, Capt. Brown, ladder 3. I'm at the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
I'm on the 35th floor. Okay?
Okay.
Just related to the command post. We're trying to get up. There's numerous civilians at all stairwells, numerous burn injuries are coming down. I'm trying to send them down first. Apparently, it's above the 75th floor. I don't know if they got there yet, okay?
Okay.
It's a 3 truck and we're still heading up, all right?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Obviously, it's that was impactful to me, and I read Mike Brown's book, who's his brother.
Yes.
Just such a beautiful story. But anyway, that going back to what you're saying about going up anyway, I think that was the context, right?
Yeah. I mean, so we believe Paddy Brown was the most and highest decorated New York City fireman murdered on September 11th, right? He had so many medals that belong on the left breast of his uniform that he would leave them home in his drawer because he didn't want to embarrass the other guys. So he would only put the 10 or 20 most important ones, on his uniform, because that was Paddy Brown. Paddy Brown was a United States Marine Corps sergeant in Vietnam at the age of 17 or something. Hero, right? Came back like a lot of those guys and was spat upon. It was not the greatest time of his life. and his dad was an alcoholic, and Paddy was an alcoholic, and finally Paddy got on top of it. So he became AA. He became a mentor to the New York film and television community. The biggest supermodels would call Paddy's cell phone and say, I'm gonna start drinking again, and he would have to talk them out of it. He was their sponsor. He would not tell anybody who he was the sponsor to, but he would get these crazy calls, right? He was a marathoner. He was a yogi. He was a bicycler. He was a black belt in karate. He was a Golden Gloves boxer. I mean, he had a lot of energy because he didn't drink, right? Which I get, but are you kidding me?
My name is Patrick Brown, and I'm a captain on the New York Fire Department. You know, I kind of got burnt out in the fire department. Between the Marines and the fire department, I lost a lot of trauma, and especially the last few years, a lot of my friends were killed in action in the fire department, and I was really burnt out, you know, and emotionally, and in a real deep way, this has kind of rejuvenated myself, you know. I mean, into all that tragic kind of circumstances that I've experienced, it's through coming in here and practicing, it's given me kind of like a solace and introspection, and it's kind of helped me. It's brought me up. Aside from dealing with that grief stuff, it's kind of really helped me kind of feel the beauty of life again. You know, when it comes.
And he was a model himself. Like, he graced the covers of Men's Health magazine and things like that. You know, confirmed bachelor. Every girlfriend I had, every female relative I had would just melt when you brought up Paddy's name or they were in his presence, you know. And he just took it as him and Terry Hatton had competitions about who had the better girlfriend, right? Because one was dating a supermodel while the other one was dating the girl who was in the January Playboy magazine, right? And they would try and outdo each other. And yeah, so you know, we're not sure. I've looked many times, and I tried really hard to positively identify his image in the North Tower lobby in the Naudet film, and I think we have it, but I can't be positive that we have it. But what we do have is the recordings, and the recording that you're referring to, he picked up a landline telephone, and he called the fire department dispatcher. He knew that number by heart, and so this call is recorded because of that. So that's when he says, you know, we have numerous injured and burned. We're assisting them. We're sending them down. This is 3 truck, and we're still going up, right? It's the famous Paddy Brown recording. Subsequent to that, from what I've heard when I talk with guys who heard this, he is directly ordered, he and his men are directly ordered by the chief to get out of the building, to evacuate the building. And he comes back on the radio and he says, "This is Captain Brown, captain of Ladder 3. I hereby refuse your order. There are too many injured and burned up here. We will not leave this building until they're all out." That is not recorded, but is recited by many who heard it. So another example of the greatest love, right? Where he could have taken the easy way out. He could have said, "Oh, just following orders," right? And he could have left the building with his men, and maybe they wouldn't have lived, but it would have been a better chance at living. But that would never ever happen with Captain Paddy Brown. Never ever happen. He was a hero to the end. He did the right thing, as Ray Pfeiffer would have said. He did the right thing even when no one was looking. He was always doing the right thing. And so a funny story that involves, you know, Paddy and Mike, his brother Mike, who I became great friends with, who wrote the book What Brothers Do, about our situation. But we're at Paddy's. We didn't have his body yet, but the family wanted to do his memorial service. So we're up at the funeral home before we went to St. Patrick's Cathedral, and I'm standing with Carolyn, his sister, and all these women are coming up to Carolyn and saying to her, Paddy and I were just, we were just getting back together. In fact, we were getting engaged. We were going to get married next year. 8 women told Carolyn that they were engaged to Paddy Brown because that was Paddy Brown. And if you listen to the other recording, his Mickey Mouse phone and his answering machine, you hear all the ladies leaving loving and kind messages, tearful messages for him. So I'm standing there at the funeral home with Carolyn, and we're kind of snickering about this. And she's giving me the elbow. Oh, here comes another one, and this group of people are like in a line. They're coming through the crowd because there were about 1,000 people in line, and they have their arms on the person in front of them. They're kids, and they're being led by this woman with red hair, right? And so Carolyn's, who is that? And so that's my job. She wants to know who it is. I'm gonna go find out who it is. And so I go over to this woman. Her name is Teresa. I had not met her before. And I said, so who are you and why are you at Paddy Brown's funeral or memorial service? And she says, well, all these kids following me are blind. And Paddy Brown used to teach all these kids karate in his spare time. This was Paddy Brown. He compartmentalized. He was very good at keeping things in his life separate and quiet. That's why he was a good counselor to the famous people for AA. And so we're all shocked. So we're like, of course, bring them in, let them meet the family. Everybody else can wait. These kids are special. And they were very special to Patrick. And so the next day we saved us front row seats for them in St. Patrick's Cathedral, and we got them in early so they could get seats and all that. Anyhow, we took care of them. But for years and years, I battled with why. Because Paddy Brown didn't have time. But he took the time to spend time with these kids who were blind. And of course, we recognize the humanity of it. We recognize that he's a great mentor for these kids. He doesn't have his own kids, so I get that and all that. But I was like, there's got to be something deeper in this. And then a few years ago, I think I might have figured it out. Not only was he teaching them about karate, he was learning from them for himself. Why? Because when you operate in a smoke environment, what do you lose? You lose your vision. You're operating as though you're a blind person. So he was learning from them how to operate as a blind person so he could take it back to the firehouse and be a better firefighter himself and teach his men how to operate without your vision and learn from these kids. How do they operate in touch and feel, and how do they not get themselves, tripping down stairs and stuff, right? And so I think he was learning from them as much as they were learning from him. Mm. And I think that's why he chose to work with blind kids, besides the humanity of it,
Yeah. Incredible story. I'd highly recommend that book, What Brothers Do by Michael Brown.
Michael Everett Brown, yeah. Yep.
So in the days after, let's talk about the rescue and recovery. And another thing that I just thought of that struck me about Mike Brown's book, he described after coming out from Vegas to try to find Paddy in the days following, he described seeing Ground Zero or the site as as seeing the Grand Canyon for the first time. Like you could see the pictures and videos on TV, but until you're there and standing in it, it's not something that you could really comprehend.
Right.
So, what did the site look like? What did it smell like? And what was going on there in the days following for the rescue and recovery?
Yeah, I think Mike's description as the Grand Canyon is accurate because you just can't. It's breathtaking. Both of them were breathtaking. One in a very good way, and one in a very very bad way. Um, in the beginning, it was a little hard for us because we were in it. You know, um, we were under it. It took us a while to really start comprehending, and I'm not sure even to this day we really do. The destruction was complete, and the thing we talk about in the beginning was the beeping of the PASS devices, the personal alert safety systems, which they're motion sensors that every firefighter had on their breathing apparatus, and they would let out a screeching sound because in a fire it would help us find them if they were unconscious. There were hundreds of them screaming that each pass device was responsible for a firefighter, and they were screaming, "My firefighter's down! My firefighter's down!" I'm making those words up, but they were screaming to us help, and they were buried so deeply, or that we couldn't do anything about it, and it the feeling was complete helplessness. Um, for a group of public servants who that's their job is to help, and we felt completely helpless and responsible um, for all of it, and the fact that we couldn't bring them back to their families, just devastating guilt. um, I remember a story specifically. My younger brother Chris and my friend Paul Conway from Milwaukee had come to help me um, in this very challenging time, and they were concerned about me, my darkness, about my pain, about possible suicide. Um, but they came to support me, and they would always know when bad news was coming to me, um, and they would always be at my side. My brother Chris under my left arm, my friend Paul under my right arm. And I remember being told names of friends and being confirmed who's missing and who's dead. And I remember it being like getting hit with a Babe Ruth baseball bat in the gut so hard that my legs went out from under me, and my legs would go out from under me all the time. And they knew it, and they would stand there and hold me so I wouldn't fall down. And it the 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 pain was like the building collapse, right? Every time you thought it was the worst, it got worse and worse and worse, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And if I didn't have my friend and brothers around me, things might have been different. Um, I just don't know how much a human can take of this pain. One of the hardest decisions in the days, weeks, months after was, which of your friends' funerals were you going to miss because you had 5 other funerals that day? And how do you make that choice? Um, I mean, you can only go to so many things, right? Uh, so this was happening. My best friend, Captain Terry Hatton's wife, Beth, found out on September 12th that she was pregnant. And they were, a little on the older age for having a baby. And so we were very concerned about her health, about the baby's health. While the father of her child, her loving husband, my best friend, was in the rubble. Um, and also, one of the other things that happened that people don't maybe don't realize is the the help, the outpouring of love and support came from literally all over the world. In fact, people literally, cops and firemen from all over America literally got in their fire trucks and their police cars and drove to New York. And it became a logistical nightmare for us because we didn't know who was who. We didn't know if there was someone, that was going to walk down there with a backpack on and blow up the command posts. We were really terrified that it was going to keep coming at us. And in fact, it did. And we were hit shortly thereafter with anthrax. Right? I wind up working on the anthrax stuff. They were trying to get me away from Ground Zero. Um, and then we had Flight 587 go down. That all happened like within 2 months. And I mean, how much can you take? And, after all of that, in those months between September and like May, I had to do something else. And my brother Chris worked it out. People who loved me agreed that I needed to get out of New York and get away from it. And so that's when I started my relationship with working with the federal government. And I think that was the right call. It took my mind off of things. It gave me a different focus, different crowd. I wasn't being reminded every day. You asked before about what was it like there, and one of the questions you asked was the smell, and that smell of death, rotting bodies, wet concrete, and steel, and the smoke from deep-seated fire is something I will never forget and will always be a bit terrified of, because as soon as I smell that smell anywhere, it takes me right back, and it's not a good place to be. Um, I didn't spend time post 9/11 at Ground Zero that a lot of guys did, right? Because I was mayor's office. We had a city to run. We had all this other stuff going on. They didn't really want me down there for emotional reasons. So a lot of those guys who got sick was because they were there for months and they were breathing that terrible concoction of poison. Um, and I got away with it for like 20 years. I got away with not being sick for 20 years, but now it's caught up with me, and you know, no matter what happens, and I'm okay. I have good news, but no matter what happens to me, I've had 20 plus more years on this earth than my friends had. Um, and I've tried to make good use of it. The Franciscans, right? While we are here, while we have time, let us do good. And that's what I've been trying to do. And part of that is that mantra, never forget, that we talked about. So I want everybody out there to remember. And never forget means never. And that means all of it, right? That means the whole thing. That means the story of the heroes. The goodness, right, of the outpouring of love from all over the world. It means all, but it also means you have to remember the terrible horrors of the day, the people that really suffered, the people who were really tortured, and the evil radical Islamists that did it. We have to be able to say all those things because it's all true, right? Never forget the whole thing, the whole truth. When I speak, that's the first half. The second half is patience in grief. And I've been doing a lot more of that speaking around the country to our uniformed services, our protectors, to be an example of, even though all this happened to me personally, to us in New York and other places, it's always hard to see the light through the darkness. It's very hard to be patient for that light to appear. I am telling everyone in your audience, it is worth it. I think back now, if I had taken my own life back then, all these wonderful things that have happened to me, all these wonderful people I've met who I love dearly, I never would have had that beauty in my life. And it took a long time. Patience and grief means years of patience. It doesn't mean patience this week. I've met some of the greatest American heroes in person. They have become my great friends. I have a girlfriend now who I never would have met, who I love tremendously. And I wouldn't have been able to see the children of my friends grow into productive young heroes like their parents were. And that brings me great joy to be a part of their lives and to help them and mentor them. And yeah, and if I had taken my own life, none of that ever would have come to me. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was the goodness of therapy. So it took me a long time to find the right therapist. I say I went through about 10 people before I found wonderful Ashley. And Ashley never pretended to be in my shoes. What she did is she listened to me, and then she gave me tools that I could use to help myself. One of those tools I talk about is compartmentalization of grief. And instead of being in pain all day long, every day, you give yourself some amount of time. For me, it was an hour in the morning, every morning, where I would grieve for myself. I would grieve for the loss of my friends. But then, I would do that with Andrea Bocelli's voice singing to me in my noise-canceling headphones. And I would do that on the flight when I was going back and forth from New York to Washington, D.C. And when those tires hit the tarmac, I wiped my eyes. I took off the headphones, and I tried to have a productive day. And that's just one of the tools, right? But the therapy really did help me a lot. Uh, and the fact, and I guess what I want to convey is don't give up when you don't get along with a therapist or they're not the right fit for you. Don't give up. Keep trying other therapists. Because eventually, and I've heard this from several guys that went through similar, uh, uh, just keep trying. A good friend of mine who was trapped in the rubble was, uh, went through 6 therapists. So I'm saying keep trying. Don't give up. Um, walk away from that horror of taking your own life.
So you said before that you are a man of faith.
Yes.
How did 9/11 impact your faith?
I grew up going to church in Connecticut with my family. It was every Sunday. We were Presbyterian, Congregational, Christian, but like as an adult, so I had a base of faith, right, that my parents gave to me. But I think I'm not a church-going guy. Uh, I think because of the fire department and so many funerals before 9/11 that I've always been around people of faith. And in the New York City Fire Department, we always had chaplains, and I remember always being comforted that the chaplains were there with us at these emergencies and things like there. They were there to pray with us, to support us. And I think it probably really started getting deeper when I met Father Michael Judge, who was one of the guys who had dinner with us once a month. Paddy, Terry, me, Father Mike, a bunch of other guys. We would have dinner together once a month. And he was just such a wonderful person and a wonderful soul. And I just remember learning from him and looking up to him uh, and being his friend. And I believe more in um, the individual than a religion. And Michael, a bunch of us believe that he should be a saint. We believe he is a saint or was a saint. In fact, he was in the North Tower lobby uh, with his rosary beads praying for us, and it's on the footage, the film footage. Uh, so I think he's really the one that brought me closer to it. And now there's a chaplain, a woman chaplain who I'm close with, who I adore. I just think they're good humans, and then it's just it's my relationship with God, just like it's your relationship with God. God is in you, God is in me, and I've learned that life is a lot easier when you listen to Him, and when you uh, take the path that He has set you on. When you go off on other paths, um, it gets more difficult. So I've tried to listen to Him. I know He has answered my prayers so many times. Things I have asked Him for help with. People I've wanted to meet. People I wanted to get close with. It's a funny story. When I wound up back in New York in 2004, I came back to a very dark, lonely, painful place because my friends were all dead. I didn't have much money because I retired. I didn't have a job. I was struggling, and I thought what I needed was other quality men, good quality men like Patrick and Terry and Father Mike and all those guys I could be a guy with, and um, I was very, very lonely, and I call it, besides right after 9/11, I call that my darkest time. And if I ever were a guy who was going to take his own life, it probably would have been then, but I'm not, and never will be. Um, and I would go to this little Italian restaurant on the corner of 33rd Street and 3rd Avenue, owned by two Italian brothers who didn't speak English and I didn't speak Italian. But we went out and kicked the ball around together, played some soccer together, had fun. They were good dudes. But I would go there because I didn't want to sit home alone and I was lonely, and I would go sit at the bar and have my pasta and my red wine. And I would just sit there with this big frown on my face, just the skin hanging off my face. I was so tired and lonely. And there was this beautiful olive skin young lady behind the bar named Deborah. And she would never walk anywhere. She always skipped. She was always happy. She always had a smile on her face. Life was beautiful. And one day she said to me, "Tim, what are you doing when I get off of work?" I said, "Whatever you're doing." And, and she said, "I'm going to take you with me to my friend's house." So she cleaned up, she finished up, we went, and she took me over to her friend's apartment down the street. And I sat on the couch with this guy, Matt, their little boy, and the two ladies went to the refrigerator, busted out 2 beers, put them in our hands, turned up the music, and the next thing I knew, knock, knock, knock on the door, knock, knock, knock on the door. Now the music's turned up, these girls are partying, there's 8 olive skin, beautiful Brazilian women dancing in front of us because they couldn't afford to go out, but they were all friends, they wanted to dance and have fun, whatever. So in the end, these ladies found out my story and they adopted me into their crew, and they took me to Brazil twice. They took me to Ipanema, Rio, where my favorite music is bossa nova, where it was born, and they took care of me. And they made me happy again. They made me laugh again. They uh, they made me feel loved again. And I tell that story after talking about my faith and talking about God, because this is where God says he has a sense of humor, because I thought I needed to meet quality men, and he was like, "How about 8 beautiful Brazilian women? Maybe that would help you." And in the end, God is right, and he said, "I I know you don't really know what you're talking about. You don't need good quality men. That will come with time. But how about this love from these ladies?" And um, yeah, and so the help comes from him in unexpected ways, and you don't know how he's going to operate sometimes. When we think we're smart, sometimes we're not that smart, and but he's going to do it for you. He's going to help you out. Just pray for it, and then listen with your 2 ears.
If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's what Father Mike used to say to us, and then he would giggle with his brilliant blue eyes. He used to, in the 80s, I guess, right? He used to wash the feet of AIDS patients in the Catholic Church. Hated him for it. Those men are gay. You can't do that. He's like, that's even more reason to do it. He said, "This is what Jesus did." So he did. He went over. You know what it must have felt like for those men? Because they were lepers, right? The human touch was everything to them. And to have the chaplain come and wash your feet for you, beautiful. And the more I ponder on faith and a personal relationship with God, the more it is just it's so clear. It's so clear.
So I don't particularly want to ask you this question myself,
Mhm.
but part of my job here is to act as a proxy for the listener. And
Mhm.
what that means is asking questions that I know the listeners may have that, maybe I'm not necessarily interested in asking. But as far as all the conspiracy
Mhm.
theories that surround 9/11,
Yeah.
what is your take on all the conspiracy theories? Is there any merit to them?
My thought on conspiracy theories is that they are conspiracy theories, and they have no business being in the discourse of the truth of what happened on 9/11. By spreading conspiracy theories, by buying their T-shirts and books and stuff, you are detracting from the memory of the heroes of 9/11. You're detracting from uh, all those 7,000 plus military heroes who went to war and gave their lives because of it. There is zero truth other than radical Islamic terrorists attacked America, hijacked planes, murdered those on the planes, and flew those planes into different buildings in a field in Pennsylvania. And they did it. The thing we don't do is we don't talk about the radical ideology that drives all this. And if we don't talk about it, if we don't call it what it is, then they win. And these crazy fanatical Islamists think that what they did was right. They think that's what Allah wants, and I think we should be talking about that and not about did George W. Bush plant explosives in the towers, or you know 7 World Trade Center wasn't hit by a plane, so how did it collapse? Well, you know if you read the NIST report, which I have thoroughly, it is all there in evidence. So anybody out there that's believing or spreading conspiracy theories about what happened, it's BS. And please read the report and call the terrorists what they are, and call the heroes what they are, um, and uh, and remember, everyone, all the lost, and remember their families. So. That's how I feel. It's a cottage industry. They want to make money. They're stirring up a lie so they can make money off of it, and that's disgusting.
So, what was the proudest moment of your career, if you had to pick one?
So, the proudest moment of my life, there's a couple, right? One of the proudest moments of my life is when my niece Taylor got sworn in as a firefighter in Providence, Rhode Island. Another one of the proudest moments of my life is when I met the woman who found Osama bin Laden. Another proudest moment of my life is when I first shook Rob O'Neill's hand. Another of the proudest moments is when I got a phone call from a friend telling me Ayman al-Zawahiri will not die peacefully in his sleep. He will die violently at the hands of America. I promise you. And then the follow-up phone call saying, watch the news tonight. I thought that after the 20th anniversary of 9/11 that, you know, we would really start forgetting, and that America was forgetting. And we pulled out of Afghanistan, all those things. But when I learned that the intelligence community had not forgotten and that they were working on this every day, just because we didn't hear about it or we don't hear about it doesn't mean they're not working on serving justice. There were young people that spent the last 10, 15 years on specific projects every day, trying to get one little tidbit of information that would add to the whole scenario to make sense and be able to find these terrorists and kill them. So when I got to go to a place and say thank you in person to these people who toiled tirelessly for the past 10 or 15 years on our behalf, when I got to go around the world and shake hands with people who never forgot about us, including our partner countries, I never thought I would be so blessed as to be able to shake their hands. And on behalf of the FDNY, the NYPD, the PAPD, all the families, on behalf of my friends, to say a heartfelt thank you for never forgetting what they did to us. So I guess I have had many proud moments in my life. I hope there are some more coming. And I hope my friends are looking down on me now. And I hope they're proud of me. And I hope that I've lived up to the mantra of never forget.
Well, I don't know your friends. I wish I did after hearing you talk about them, but I think that they would be.
Thank you.
Pretty hard to argue that one, man.
Thank you.
So, last thing before we get into what you're doing now, as I mentioned in the beginning, you were a first responder to the 93 World Trade Center bombing, the Oklahoma City incident, and then also the Station nightclub fire where 100 people were killed. So that coupled with 9/11, coupled with the 20 years that you spent at the FDNY, you've seen a lot of death and tragedy. And what does that make you feel about life and what the meaning of life is? Does it make it seem more fragile or does it make it seem more significant, if that makes sense?
Yeah, both. It's both. It is fragile. I held a firefighter friend of mine last week in my arms, right after we prevented him from committing suicide. It's happening all the time. But life is such a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I just don't know how you get to that place that is such a dark place, and I'm sorry, but life is so wonderful, even when you're in pain. I just I I don't know. For me, when I go, I go. You know, when he wants me to come to his side, I will go. But while I'm here, there's so much love and life and laughter and beauty and goodness out there. Um, and I want to be an example of that for other people. I want to be an example of that, especially for the children of the 9/11 fallen and the children of the Gold Star, fallen. Um, I want to do the good work for the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. We're taking on an $8 billion mission to eradicate veteran homelessness in America. By the end of this year, we should have around a dozen hotels throughout America By the end of next year, we should have doubled that. I am proud to, for now, volunteer, but I'll be going on board with them soon. But that's the beauty of life, right? There are so many people out there who need us, who need help, who need us to love them. I've been so blessed since 9/11 with so many new friendships and so much love to be given and to take back, Um, I'm a lucky man. Uh, and I miss my friends, and I will talk about them till my dying breath. But I also have friends here now who I love and adore and who love me back. So life is awesome.
So yeah, Tunnel to Towers. You're taking on an $8 billion homeless veteran initiative, amongst a lot of other things that Tunnel to Towers does. And I think a lot of people have probably heard the name, but me, like I wasn't familiar with just exactly how much good that they do. And so, in preparation for this interview, I followed the Tunnel to Towers Instagram and been keeping up with the stuff that they're doing. And right before this, they posted about paying off the mortgage of Chris Chambers, who was one of the 2 Navy SEALs that was just lost at sea, paying off the mortgage for his family. And we don't have to get into exactly what you did with the government, but you have a better understanding of how the government works, maybe, than I do. But I'll just be honest, my first thought when I saw that was, why is Tunnel to Towers taking care of this? Why is, not to pick on Naval Special Warfare, but why is NSW not taking care of this? And what I mean by them is not them specifically, but why is Naval Special Warfare not allocated discretionary funds by the government to take care of our Gold Star families, of the people that give their lives for this country? Why does it rely on the generosity of independent donors to take care of these people? So, and again, I'm not calling out Naval Special Warfare. They should have that money readily available to take care of their men. But why don't they? And why does Tunnel to Towers and all these other amazing foundations, why are they the ones that do it?
Yeah, I mean, why? I don't know. Should they? Yes. Uh, um, for whatever reason, Congress hasn't seen to uh, to make this an issue that they pass the law or whatever it is. What I do know, what it needed was leadership. And with the Siller family and the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, we have that leadership, and no problem is too big for us. When Frank Siller, the CEO, said the Tunnel to Towers Foundation is going to eradicate veteran homelessness in America, I think a lot of people probably laughed. But you forget it's Frank Siller, and you forget it's the Siller family, and you forget that we mean it when we say it. Um, we'll have 12 hotels throughout America by the end of 2024. Those hotels will hold between 50 and 200 homeless vets in small studio apartments. One of the key things here is that in the first floor will be the services that they need. So they'll have mental health service, they'll have physical health help, they'll have counselors for VA benefits and things. So all the things that they're going to need to help them get back on their feet are going to be right there in their home. And we're the goal is to get them back out into society and get them productive and working and happy again, right? So We'll be going around to different large corporations. Frank has already challenged the Fortune 500 companies to get involved and to help and support the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. We'll provide the leadership. We'll provide the organization. We're already doing it, but what we need is the donations because we have to raise $8 billion to do this. It seems like a mountain, but we're not going to stop until we have done this. It is America's responsibility to ensure that our volunteer heroes, when they come home from war for protecting our homeland, that we acknowledge them and we take care of them and we get them back into society because we're the ones that broke them in the first place, right? We broke them. It's our responsibility as a country to fix it. And we will be going to the government. We will be going to Congress, and I hope that I hope people see it the same way that we see it, Dalton.
Yeah, and I would encourage people to just go take a look at Tunnel to Towers and see exactly what it is that they do, because they put it all out there and they're doing incredible, incredible work. And, I hope that didn't come off like I was speaking out of school because I may very well be. I don't know much about it, but I'm just sharing that was my initial impression.
Yeah.
And that just like you said, we should be taking care of these people when they come home or if they don't come home.
Yeah, and their families. So, Tunnel to Towers is doing a lot of good throughout America. We were talking about Chris Chambers, who is, I found posts, I did not know Chris, but a good Navy SEAL buddy of mine was very close with him. And I found out that the story of Chris Chambers was that he got a piece of World Trade Center steel and put it in a beautiful plexiglass stand and with a nice plaque, and it was a gift from the students who got through his BUDS class to the instructors. And so we have this very close friendship with Chris Chambers, and the FDNY. And so the fact that Tunnel to Towers turned around in 5 days and paid off the mortgage for his family brings that all full circle. We're one family, all right? Our firefighters, our police officers, our paramedics and EMTs, our military, our intelligence community who deploy. We are in this together. We are America's protectors. The Tunnel to Towers Foundation is taking care of us, the families, the children, and the catastrophically injured military. We are proud and honored to do it, and we could not do it without the help of the American people, because the donations, 95% of every dollar goes to the end user. 4-star charity navigator rating. It is the right charity to take care of America's heroes the way we should be.
Yeah. It's awesome. So where can people find you?
People can find me at eaglerisespeakers.com. eaglerisespeakers.com. That is the speakers network run by my good buddy, Navy SEAL Jason Redman and his wife. There you will find, I guess, maybe 100 stories or something around there that are similar to mine, different stories of our heroic military, of our heroic firefighters and police officers. And there are stories of resilience and survival. So we have a whole speakers, it's kind of like a speakers bureau, but you can go there and read these different stories and hire these men and women who have been through these tough times to come and speak to your workforce. We know there's a business model for this, and we took it on 7 or 8 years ago. And it's growing. So eaglerisespeakers.com, and you'll find my stuff on there, and also a lot of other American heroes.
Awesome. And before we go, I wanted to. So wait till I'm under the mic again. So last episode I had Brent Tucker, who's that former Delta Force operator on.
Oh, okay.
And I told him that you were coming on. So he started this company. I just wanted to show the camera the bag because it's pretty cool. Bag
That
of
is cool.
coffee, and I know that you'll smoke these.
Oh, I definitely
So,
smoke those.
I'll
Hey,
give
thank you very
a
much.
little something
Yeah.
free on the bottom.
That's
But,
very nice. Tell them I said thank you.
No,
please.
absolutely. So they donate portions of all of their company's sales to all first responder causes. So, for example, if you buy that firefighter bag, it goes to firefighter causes. Same for police and EMS. And they're doing some great stuff. He's a great dude. So I'll
This
hook
is
you guys
awesome.
up afterwards.
What, yeah. And where is he? Where does he live?
So he's
What
based
state?
out of Florida.
Florida. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Longwood, Florida. This is awesome. I never heard of it. This
Yeah.
is fantastic.
No, it's good coffee. I'm not a coffee snob, but I'm not going to drink crap either. And
Yeah.
so I
Well,
know you'll
I don't
smoke
drink
those
coffee,
as
but
well.
I'm going to drink this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to share it with people I'm close with who do drink coffee. So thank you. This is fantastic. The packaging is great.
Yeah, it's cool, right? That's why I want
Yeah.
to show the camera the bag.
Yeah. Veteran-owned, community-focused, first responder-driven. Fantastic.
Yeah, they're doing really good stuff over there. And by the way, I'm not compensated by Brent or FRCC. I just thought that this would be a good fit, and I wanted to plug their company because there's
Perfect.
Again, going back to an example, it's on him, right, to donate to first responders because somebody's got to take care of them.
That's, I mean, that's what we do. We're, whatever. We're doing it.
Yeah,
We're doing it. The end result is these veterans are going to be taken care of.
That's right.
And our heroes who sacrifice so much will be taken care of. So, FRCC is also doing it. So,
man. So Tim, again, I said it in the beginning. It was seriously an honor to have you come out here. I think that living where we live or living where I live, right next to the city, I could see the Freedom Tower from my apartment, and it lights up every September 11th. And I think it's something that we talk about once a year, and we watch what's on TV about it, and we cry about it, and then on September 12th, we go back to our lives and forget about it until next year. And I think that it should be something that we talk about more than once a year because of the impact that it's had, not only to America, but to the world, to be honest.
for sure.
And it's just crazy how many stories are linked by those events, whether you were somebody that lost somebody or know somebody that was lost, or you joined the military afterwards, or you're a first responder now. It's something that we need to continue to talk about, and it's something that you should be really proud of because you're doing important work by making sure that people never forget. So seriously, man, it means a lot to me personally that you would come out here and share the story here in this studio. But yeah, man, thank you again. It was an honor, and
Thank you,
I
brother.
appreciate you coming out here.
God bless you. Thank you for putting it out there. A lot of important information is out there, and I appreciate you talking about Tunnel to Towers and the book What Brothers Do by Michael Everett Brown. Fantastic read, and keeping their memories alive. So thank you, Dalton.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it, brother.
God bless you.